Today we continue on with the entrance by building a train station to the back of it, because one of you guys gave me the idea, which actually was always the idea, but then because you guys gave the idea, it never left my brain, and now we're building a train station. So before we actually get started, don't forget to like and subscribe button if you want to see more. Now let the chaos begin. So yeah, it was always the idea that the entrance would have a train station incorporated in it, and the first idea was just, let's not build on the entrance, because the first episode was like 40-50 minutes long just building the front facade of the entrance. So I was just like, oh yeah, we're not going to continue on with the entrance for a bit. I'm going to focus on like the main street. And then I think 2 comments were already like, this place needs a train station. And yeah, I'm very suggestible. Like, if you give me an idea or at least put something in my head, it will most likely never leave. So thank God that you guys suggested the train station and not to start a cult, because, I mean, there's already the cult of chicken nuggets. McDonald's chicken nuggets, because they are better than KFC, and I will die on that hill. Or at least they're better here in the Netherlands, with the very limited experience I have with KFC. Anyways, let's continue talking about the building and not about starting a cult, which might sound fun in-game. Anyways, let's move on. So when it came to building the train station, I always wanted it to, as I said, be incorporated into the entrance, so that as you're walking through the entrance, you'll eventually have like stairs to the side where you can go into the station and like go to the back of the park or somewhere else in the park. So yes, every area is going to have a train station, which is going to be fun for some areas where it's like, all right, how am I going to make this work? Because yeah, newsflash, a lot of myths don't have train stations, so it's going to be fun trying to make it all sort of make sense. Well, it doesn't have to make sense like, oh, there's a train station in this mythology. It's just like the building has to kind of blend in with everything. I think it's going to be the easiest with like the Arthurian, because you just built like a medieval building that sort of looks like maybe a warehouse or something. But how are we going to incorporate it in, well, with Vikings or Norse mythology, you can just build a longhouse. And then I did forget all of the mythologies or all of the areas that we're going to build. Because I remember, I constantly want to say Viking, but Norse mythology, I want to have Arthurian because I want to build medieval stuff. We have Japanese. What were the others? I don't know. Oh yeah, there was Greek. I don't know why I constantly forget Greek. Maybe because the word mythos already makes me think of Greek mythology. So I'm always thinking like, oh yeah, because the name is Mythos, it's already Greek. But no, the main street, or the beginning area, is basically, what if you mash together Paris and the Industrial Revolution? But then make it more romantic by like adding a lot of roses. Yeah, basically I want the main street to have this very romantic vibe. I also want to have a canal to the side of it, because that makes it even more romantic to me. I like that idea. And not have it be like really child themed, if that's the way to say it. Like, you know, when you go to like Disney, it's very much like geared towards children. And with Mythos, I kind of want it less so, or at least less obvious. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a theme park, so there's going to be things that are more geared towards children. But I don't want it to be really obvious. I mean, I think it already works because it's like steampunk inspired, which is usually not really a style geared towards children. But yeah, anyway, so I, of course, because it is a train station, I had to build a giant clock. Now, why is it giant? It's giant because I wanted a giant clock, and because the hands of the clock, somebody, I think Kane mentioned in the last video, oh yeah, what I was going to call pointers or arrows, but no, the hands of a clock. Yeah, that's what I did, but I didn't find any pieces that would kind of work that were smaller than what I've used. Because what I've used is swords. Because you can never go wrong with a sword. But yeah, so the arrows of the clock are swords, but I couldn't size them down further than I did, which meant that like, oh yeah, the clock is going to be giant, which kind of works. Also, the clock was inspired by an actual clock, like just a regular clock, like something you put on like the mantle piece, but I didn't like it. It's a bit more whimsical and such. I mean, I also in the end built lockers because it's the entrance area, so it needs to, or it's the entrance, but like the area around the entrance, it needs to have lockers, it needs to have toilets, it needs to probably have a first aid post, it needs to have like an information desk, maybe strollers. Like there's a lot of things that realistically would be around the entrance. You might also, of course, have like a souvenir shop, and because it's Main Street, there's going to be a lot of other shops, food and other souvenirs and plushies and all of that. But yeah, when it came to the entrance, it was just, I want a train station, it needs to have a giant clock, there's going to be lockers, which I actually removed from the speed build just because this video was getting long. And yeah, I spent like 50 minutes on a clock. I also spent 50 minutes on lockers because I have a weird fascination with buttons, at least in this game. It's just that when I, like, the same thing happened with the car or the parking things. Yeah, my brain is just completely losing out on all sense of the English language. But like the parking machines where I had like the little buttons there, I like that. Like, it's a weird thing of like that amount of detail is not necessary at all, but just because I'm able to have buttons for like your credit card or for however you want to pay, just because I can have buttons, it makes me weirdly happy whenever I build something that has buttons, because then I can place buttons. Yeah, don't ask me about gutters. None of this entrance building has gutters because I can't be bothered, but tiny buttons on like a parking machine or a locker machine, because obviously you will have to pay for access to the lockers, so there needs to be a machine where you can pay, but placing the buttons, sure. Making the whole building realistic by having gutters, we'll do it later. But buttons though. Does anyone else has this like weird fascination with like a minute detailing thing in Planet Coaster 2? And just, you get very happy when you get to do it, even though it's very limited on where you can actually do it. Because again, for me, it's just buttons. If I can put the buttons on like an ATM machine, I am very happy. Building the rest of the ATM machine is just hyperfixation. Yeah, I think when it came to the lockers and the clock, it was basically just like my brain went numb and I couldn't think of anything else besides building what I was building. Which, when it comes to the rest of the building, looking at like all of the clips, because I have the edit version of the video in front of me as well, just so that I know what is going on the screen right now. But like, I can see the points where I just completely went like zoned out, because those are the long clips. All of the other things are like, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, at most 20 minutes. And then there's some clips that are like 50 minutes. And then I realized, oh yeah, that's when I placed buttons, or when I placed to build a clock, or it's like the details that, well, in the case of the clock, it makes sense. It's like the main feature of the station. You will see that across the entire square. It's probably like, there's also this area underneath the clock where the station, or at least the wall, kind of juts out a bit. I actually wanted to build an organ there. Like, whenever like the clock hits the hour mark, like the organ plays, and like depending on the hours, like maybe at 12 it plays a special tune or something, but I didn't have time for that this video, or at least, I mean, the station is not finished yet is what I'm trying to say. Because, yeah, this video took so long. And like my fascination of buttons didn't even make it in. I was just like, yeah, this is a minute detail. It's basically me just being completely fascinated by placing buttons. But I am going, like, the entrance is basically going to be a 3-part is what I'm saying. And this 3rd part is probably also going to, well, hopefully going to include the parking lot. Because right now it's just the entrance with nothing around it. But, well, actually with some parting around it. And the entrance is not even the weenie. Well, it is a weenie, but it's not the weenie of the park. Because that's going to be a giant castle, because I am creative. Well, it's a giant castle or a giant villa. I want to have a drop coaster with it. Because when it comes to the weenie, the idea that I have would make so much sense with a drop coaster, because I want like a huge clock tower. And then it would be really amazing if I could somehow make it so that the clock, like the face of the clock, splits open and then the coaster just drops you out of the clock tower. I have so many ideas for the weenie. However, we're not building the weenie for quite some time, because first I need to finish the main street. Here's the thing where building in Naturalis right now is very easy compared to building in Mythos. And that's because in Naturalis, a lot of like the puzzle pieces are already laid out, so I can connect things. Here with Mythos, we're literally just starting from scratch. So I need to build the main street so that I have an idea of where everything else is going to go. However, that also means that there's not going to be coasters for a bit. Well, actually, Main Street, because of the size of it, could actually have a coaster, but it would be like a small coaster. And yeah, now that I set the idea of like the clock face splitting open, revealing the coaster, or revealing the drop where you're dropped out of, it's just not leaving my brain right now. So I'm constantly like, sometimes you just have like a song stuck in your brain. I have just a clock face breaking open and a coaster dropping out of it, just on loop in my brain right now. Does this make any sense with what you're actually seeing on screen right now? No, but we're all Chaos Gremlins here, I think. But anyways, so we're back on track with the actual things that we're building right now. So another thing that I was very happy with when it came to building this is that I can finally build vaulted ceilings again. Like, you don't really have vaulted ceilings in modern builds, but because this is like what if Paris and Steampunk had a love baby, you can have vaulted ceilings. And I'm really happy with it, because it was the one thing that could make the entrance, or at least the area underneath the station, somewhat interesting. Because if it was just an open area, it would just be a dark, very claustrophobic feeling area. But with all of the vaulted ceilings and all of the pillars, you can already just hear the children screaming, running around, chasing each other, all in between the pillars, just like running around there like madmen. And don't you lie, we have all done that when we were children, just chasing each other around the pillars, because it's fun. Anyways, back to what we're building really now. So I, as I said, wanted it to be kind of steampunky, and the actual architecture style that we're going for when it comes to the buildings, I found out is called Second Empire style, which is like, I think 1800s, but it's like when, for I think a very short time, France became a kingdom again after the revolution, I think, but I'm not sure. But that's like the building style, and then adds like a lot of like ironwork and such. Like, what we're building right now is basically the majority of the station. I don't yet sadly have glass pieces, so just pretend that there's glass in there. But this was inspired by a, how do you call it? Glass house? No. What's it called? a greenhouse, that's what it is. A glass house, yeah, that's very imaginative, Poison. But it was pretty much just based on that. And then just expand it. Just make it bigger, and then at the end, I'm also going to put like columns on the end, like steel columns, just to sort of have it be finished. But building this was interesting. There's a lot of things that like I looked at other people building and then I was like, ooh, I could have used that, or I could have used that, which you will probably see in future builds, because when it comes to Planet Coaster 2, yeah, I'm also looking at other people, seeing how they use the pieces and what pieces they're using, especially when it comes to building fences, because there's no classical fences. There's actually no classical buildings or, well, style. Like when it comes to, like, this was the most surprising thing for me. I wanted to have benches, but like you know, like the classical park benches. They're not in game. It's all just like very heavily themed to like mythology, like the resort theme, the Viking theme. Like it's very heavily themed towards those. Also, surprisingly, I think none of the benches that you have in game have like a back to them. Anyway, so then I've been posting this station on Reddit a lot of the time. Like, I think when I finished building the main part of the station, and then I had to build the towers, and then I finished off the building, and then I did all of the foliage, and like every stage I was just like, I want to show this off because I am very proud of it, because I have not yet built myself into a mental institute, which is great. That's an achievement on its own by the amount of things that I built. But somebody asked, how do you build these things? Like, how do you look at the pieces? And my main thing is, don't look at like the sets or the style of the pieces. Like, there's the marble pieces that are tied to the mythology set. There's the wooden pieces where a lot of them are tied to the Viking bag, or not Viking bag, Viking set. But like, all of the pieces are sort of put into sets. However, if you look beyond that and look just at the materials of the pieces, then it becomes a lot easier to see how versatile some pieces can be. Because a whole lot of buildings use marble for decoration and such. Yes, marble in-game is tied to the mythology set, but it is basically just marble pieces. So you can use them whenever you need marble. The same things goes for like the wooden pieces, where like, hey, if you want like a wooden fence, use those. Even though it's not like a Viking fence. Or when it comes to like all of the metal stuff, or like the steel beams that I've been using so far, they're mostly tied to the underwater set. But if you just look at the material, it's just steel beams. So I could use it for this greenhouse-esque station. So that's like a main tip of like seeing where you can use pieces, is to not look at like the set that they're tied to, but look at like the material and kind of the shape. And then the funny thing is, like, plaster and bricks are the most versatile, because plaster basically just looks like concrete. You will be hard to find a building right now that doesn't use concrete, or bricks for that matter. So those materials are just the most versatile. However, when it comes to the plaster, there's this one plaster brick. I'm going to just call it a brick because it pretty much is, but it's like, it's a corner piece of a trim, but it looks just like a brick. So I constantly want to use it as a brick. However, the snapping point of it is in the corner. It's not in like the middle or center of the brick, it's on the corner. Which annoys the hell out of me. Because I am just like, oh, this is a tiny plaster piece, I can use this everywhere. And then the snapping point is in the corner and it never snaps correctly, which means that I have to correct things. And because it's like not just like a 1 meter piece there where I can easily just like, you know, fiddle around with it and make it snap in the center, but because it's an annoying brick. It would have been such a versatile piece. The corner piece of the plaster trim thing, because of the weird snapping points. And I mean, I get the snapping point because it's a corner piece, so of course the snapping point is going to be in the corner. But it would have been so versatile if it didn't snap into the corner. But yeah, anyways, so I was building this building, and I already mentioned there's no actual glass in here. Most likely, like the steel roof and probably the steel walls would have glass in them. And so I actually constantly whined about the lack of glass. Because hey, if it rains, you're just going to be wet. And when it comes to like glass, there's usually a little bit of shine to it. And you can see that you're on the glass, like it gives this little extra bit to it. But there's no glass pieces in game, or at least there's no like see-through glass pieces. Yeah, then I saw, I think yesterday or the day before that, the update that Frontier teased for December, where it was like, oh yeah, we're going to give you glass pieces. Hell yeah! Yeah, that was literally my brain when I read that. Oh yeah, we're going to have a lot of other things, like a lot of other fixes and such, but glass pieces. I want them now. Please give them to me, because glass is very versatile. And especially later with the main streets, like I would love to make like the shop, not interiors. I'm not going to build full interiors for the shops yet. I'm not to that level of insanity yet. Yes, I will place buttons on an ATM machine, but shop interiors? No. But I do want to make like the shop windows. Like have like the ground floor, have like the windows with like a little bit of like a dressed up window. Which works a lot better if you can actually see into the window. Yeah, so maybe we will build that in December? Maybe. Actually, I will probably be starting the actual main street pretty soon-ish, which means that I will have to maybe work around the update so that like maybe later on we come back and then we do all of the like shop windows. But yeah, there's also a lot of other things like the color thing being, or the color picker being changed a bit so that you don't have to confirm. So because that's another thing that for me is only slightly annoying, but like the amount of times that I've like picked a color and not hit confirm and then the color goes back to the original color is just so many times. However, as I said before, sometimes I just completely zone out. When I do, I literally do not care about that. When I zone out, I will just, like a machine, go back and do that. I sometimes make the same mistake 3 times and I will not notice at all because I'm completely zoned out. Building the buttons on an ATM machine. If it works, it works. It's like, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And me zoning out, yeah. Anyways, then there was another thing where I zoned out. Building the doors to the station. Because of course you have to get up to the station. And I wanted doors that could open. Because that looks pretty if you can actually have like the doors open. But then I realized, oh, that means I have to do the interior of the entrance. Yeah, that's another entire video on its own. So basically, I am building doors right now that I end up deleting. Just because, oh yeah, that means I'm going to have to do an interior. Oh yeah, that also means that I have to sort of try and pick the doors out from this. Which was a lot of work. Because the one thing that's to me still annoying is like the multi-pick tool. Because it's like a separate menu. But also because of like, I used to be able to like hold shift, drag a box, and it selects everything within that box. That's still the same. But then if I want to select more, I have to manually select every piece that I want to add to the original selection by holding shift. I can't drag another box and then have that box select other pieces that it then adds to the initial selection. No, if you do, like if you drag a box, select every piece within that box. If you then drag another box and want to select all of the pieces in that box, it deselects all of the pieces from the original box. Or basically, it doesn't delete the pieces, but it like deletes the selection. So all of the pieces that you originally selected, unless they're in the second box, are not selected anymore. And that annoys the hell out of me, because I have a lot of times where just like, oh, I want to select this and then change a little bit of that and then select all of the other pieces so that I can move the entire wall or something. And then I realized, oh yeah, that doesn't work that way here. Like, that's the only gripe that I have with Planet Coaster 2. I've not ran into any bugs yet, so I'm very privileged in that way, because I've heard that there's been quite some bugs. And I am just like, yeah, dila. I'm like, what do you call it? Not hip skid. Like, the only thing that went into my brain right now was hip scotching, which is not a word, like not in its entirety. Well, just completely. What is it? Skipping. That's, I think, what's the word I was looking for. I've just been skipping my way through Planet Coaster. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is on fire. I brought marshmallows. We can roast them on the fires of the rest. So yeah, I have heard that the launch wasn't the perfect, but then doesn't affect me, and I've been completely zoning out, so no, I feel for everybody who had like the bugs, and of course the multi-pick tool is just annoying. But like, why did they change the way that worked? But I'm in a very privileged position where I have not had to deal with bugs. All I've had to deal with was my own existential dread and zoning out while building a clock. Or towers. Actually, I didn't zone out at all during the towers. The towers were just like, grind your teeth, bear with it, build it, and then hopefully it works out. And that's another thing that I saw when I posted screenshots of what I was building, that somebody mentioned like, oh, I'm building for like 2-3 hours, and then in the end I end up with something that I really don't like. Yeah, that has happened to me as well. And then I spend an extra hour on it, and then I end up usually with something that I do like. It's usually just like grind down or grind or bear with it until eventually your original idea kind of works. At least that's for me. I can't say if it works for you, because I'm not you. I mean, thank God I'm not you, because then you would be an insane, chaotic squirrel. And I don't think you can deal with that. I can barely deal with it. So anyways, back to what we're actually building. So as I mentioned, we're building a tower. Why? Because I like towers. Towers are just great. Why don't we? Well, we have like skyscrapers and such, but like towers on actual other buildings that are not towers, they are great. Towers are just amazing. They just add a little pizzazz to your building. They just add that little bit of an interest point. And the entrance has 4 towers and might actually end up with 6. I don't have a issue with that. It's not an issue. It's something I can very easily stop building towers. I don't want to, but I can. Don't make me stop building towers, because I will claw your eyes out. I'm a squirrel. I will go feral like that. Let me build my towers, please. Yeah, also a lot of buildings on the main street are going to have towers. Not big towers like this one, but like just tiny towers. It's not an addiction. It's a lifestyle. Towers. Learn it, love it. Yeah, towers. But yeah, anyways, back to the actual tower that we're building. So this was built, I think, at 3 a.m. in the morning. Or at least early in the morning. Because what's better than building a tower early in the morning? Or was it actually really late at night? Maybe I did zone out, but then the zoning out was just a short bit. Maybe. But this is also where I found out, like, oh yeah, the style that I'm building in is actually has a name. It's not just, oh, what if steampunk and Baroque had a love chat? No, the actual name of the style that I'm building it is called Second Empire, I think. At least that's what came up when I was looking on Pinterest, and one of the images was just Second Empire architecture thing. And then I actually looked up, like, oh, that's a specific name. Like, is that the style? And then I found out, yes, it is. I don't know if it's actually, like, I earlier said, like, oh, it's probably from, like, the time period when France returned to being a kingdom for a short while after the French Revolution. I don't actually know if it's from that time period. It might just be like, oh yeah, because it's empire, I immediately think of, like, kings and emperors and such. Maybe. But yeah, if you did not know, France, I think, if I know my history correctly, briefly returned to being a kingdom after the revolution. But that's like, I think, 100 years or 50 years after the revolution. And it didn't hold on for long. It didn't stay a kingdom for long, but yeah. Also, fun fact, we Dutch once ate our prime minister. So if you're thinking like, oh, poison will never go feral. Yeah, the Dutch people once ate their prime minister. I'm not joking. That's 500 years ago, but it's, well, 500, maybe 400 years ago that we ate our prime minister. But we Dutch can go wild. It's not just like, oh, we are going to like get drunk off our asses wild. No, we will just eat our prime minister. That's just like, I don't know why, but that's just the, oh yeah, the fun historical fact that I like to throw out is just, we Dutch people ate our prime minister. Have fun with that. I think somebody preserved an ear. But then also, if you actually look it up for like famous people in history, we sometimes preserve the weirdest things. And yes, I am talking about that. I think somebody preserved Napoleon's dick in a jar, and it's somewhere. Why do I know that? I don't know. That's the weird things. Like, I don't know how I found out, like, oh, we Dutch people, we ate our prime minister 400 years ago. It's just when you mindlessly scroll Twitter or TikTok at like 2 a.m. because you can't sleep, and then you come across these weird facts of like, oh yeah, that, and then you actually look up, oh, did we do that? Yes. Don't look into like biological or natural museums because they will have the weirdest shit preserved. I don't know why. We have a lot of things preserved in jars, and that is what shows up at 3 a.m. when, well, actually 2 a.m. 3 a.m. you just pass out. But at 2 a.m. when you're going through TikTok and it keeps recommending you history stuff. Like for me, TikTok is not, well, it's a bit mind melt or of a mind melt, but because I look at so much history stuff, I usually get a lot of history facts, and then you also get the weird history facts. Anyways, we're building a train station, and I'm talking about preserved things in jars in natural museums. It's weird. Anyways, these are the columns that I mentioned at the start of the video, because I wanted to have like a nice finishing to the station, and just having like the arch just be kind of there didn't really work. So I wanted to have like columns on the corners of the station just to really sort of close off the building, so that the building has closure. and that there's just a nice finishing to the actual building. Again, there's no glass, and I really don't like it. Also, in the end, this is not on video because I didn't record this because I thought it was just tiny stuff, but I did put in a lot of lighting because I wanted to have this sort of romantic vibe. You will see this later on when we put in the foliage, but I thought like, oh yeah, like nice warm lights and such, and so I put in all of the lights. Turned it to night. Place still dark as hell. I actually had to put in the floodlights to give the illusion that the lights that were there actually lit up the place. But no, if I just had the lights that I put in, still very dark. So I had to put in a lot more lights, put in fake lights. So the street lanterns that you see, yeah, they don't actually give off that much light. So there's some trickery going on there. And also because I didn't want to do the interior, I already mentioned like, oh, I had the doors where I wanted the actual doors to be able to open so that you have the nice doors and it's not just like a hallway. But I actually then put just a black piece. I think it's, what is it? One of those figure pieces. I've just put a black piece to it or in the doorway just because I couldn't be bothered doing the interior of the entrance, because the interior of the entrance looks like a porcupine. I'm not joking. There's a lot of pieces sticking into the building that makes it look like a porcupine if you turn it inside out. And so building the interior would have made me work around all of that because I can't move those pieces because then it moves on the outside. But I was just like, yeah, we're going to do that in another video. So just for now, we're just going to put like the black basic shape pieces, that's what they're actually called, and just pretend that it's not there. If you don't see the problem, then there's no problem. That's my mentality when it comes to not finishing the entire building, because the entrance is going to be a three-parter. Although, luckily enough, the next part of the entrance, which will probably not be the next video. I did say in the last video, oh, we're not going to finish the entrance this time or the next video because I've been building for so long. And then I continue building on the entrance. Might still happen that way, that next video might be the rest of the entrance, but then it will be a finishing of the entrance. Hopefully, I say to myself. But I want to build the main street, and luckily the third part of the entrance, that will be finishing the entrance, potentially, if I don't include the parking lot. It's going to be a shorter video because it's going to be like the interior of the entrance, the little side wings of the entrance, which are probably going to be like the entrance to the hotel, because the entrance is this big that it would actually probably work as a hotel as well. But yeah, the entrance is going to be a three-parter, and it's not finished yet. We're just building the back of it. So now it is pretty in the front, it's pretty in the back. The sides, don't look at those. Pretend they don't exist. That's it. Anyway, so as I mentioned, I wanted the main street to be this like really sort of romantic vibe. So of course the main flowers that I put in all of the plants are roses. And then I couldn't figure out what the secondary flower would be, because I usually don't want to have just one flower. So I had to like figure out, alright, which flowers can I use? I wanted to have a bit of height, so I used whatever these flowers are called. And then I wanted to turn them white, just to have like a nice contrasting color between the red and then have the white. And for the longest time, like I was really fidgeting with like the color wheel, just because whatever I picked that seemed white on the color wheel just stayed yellow. But anyways, in the end I figured it out, and we're going to have a lot more roses. Anyways, that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more. There's also channel memberships if you want to have early access to videos. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Bye bye.